Coming up on this episode of the Goldilocks Zone, it's version 2. That's right, movies that have made a comeback. We're looking for things that are a long span of time between the reboot, the remake, or the sequel. How did they fare with the remake? We'll tell you coming up on this episode of the Goldilocks Zone. You're entering the Goldilocks Zone, episode number 11, recorded May 7th, 2015. Movies remade, rebooted, and repeated. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Goldilocks Zone, the podcast that is an original. That's it. We're not doing it again. We're the original, but that's not going to stop us from talking about those fantastic remakes. I'm Sean Jennings, and I am joined by the Matt Mariani 2, Matt Mariani Harder. It is Matt Mariani.
Hello there, Mr. Sean. I prefer the nickname The Retcon.
The
if you don't
Retcon.
mind.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Man, don't sequels just have the best subtitles?
They do. They do. Someone's always returning or avenging something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it when they do, when they put the number in the title. Or when it's like,
that's always fun.
And then
Too
sometimes,
Fast, Too Furious.
The Fast and the Furious movies, let's be honest, have the best sequel titles. Because it's, and I'll try and get these in the right order, because I never, because they don't make a lot of sense, but, as I type in and look it up, excuse me. So, Fast and the Furious is, the first one was The Fast and the Furious, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe it was just The Fast and the Furious.
Which is important, because then the sequel was Too Fast, Too Furious.
Yep.
Then there was no number, Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift.
Mm-hmm.
Then Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
Then Fast 5. Fast and Furious 6. And now Furious 7. That's not confusing at all.
Not at all. It's such an easy, so easy to keep track of. And,
who cares? It's fun.
Yeah.
Well, thanks all of you out there for joining us. I think we've got an exciting topic to talk about. Before we get there, let me remind everybody, you should go to our website, GoldilocksShow.com. It's on the internet. You go http://www.goldilocksshow.com. Go there. All of the past episodes, audio, video, the whole shebang on YouTube as well for the video. And, of course, our audio is available via RSS. You can get it on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and in most major podcasting apps. You can also follow us on Twitter at Goldilocks Show and on Facebook, facebook.com/Goldilocks Show. The links to all of those on our website, again, GoldilocksShow.com. Before we do that, we have to remind ourselves of last week's question, or actually 2 weeks ago's question, when we asked the following, which was coming back after our conspiracy theories. Tell us a conspiracy that you consider to be underrated by the mainstream conspiracy crowd. So this is one that may have been ignored by the politically savvy conspiracy theorists, those at the top of the conspiracy pyramid, which by itself sounds like a conspiracy, but which ones are they ignoring? Matt, did you have an opinion on this one? Or has it been so long, like me, you forgot your answer? Because I feel like I had a really good answer, and now
I feel that way too, and then it just over the long drought that we had in not doing the show, I think I kind of forgot what my answer was. But you know what? I'm feeling like it's gonna have to be the cancellation of King of the Hill.
Is that go on?
I think there was a vast conspiracy to get the show King of the Hill off the air.
Mr. Matt? Mr. Matt? Mr. Matt, you there? Oh, I'm sure you didn't have anything. Oh, god damn you, Skype. Having connection problems. All right. I'm going to... Matt, are you there? All right, I will pause the recording. We'll be right back with, hopefully, Matt. All right, and we're back with Matt. Matt, please continue with your conspiracy theory around King of the Hill.
Well, like I was saying, Sean, they brought Tom Petty in the last season to voice Luann's boyfriend, right? Lucky, his name was. So what actually happened in that period of time was you should have seen a ratings jump right? Because when you introduce a famous star, obviously the ratings are going to go up, right? Isn't that what happens? Are you Googling evidence behind my conspiracy? Because
I'm
I
just
promise you there isn't any.
I don't know that much about King of the Hill, so I'm just
I'm more or less
learning a
winging
bit so
this
I
right now.
can tell you what. Matt, I have to figure out some reason to tell you why you're wrong. So
um, so that was the first part of it. Second part of the conspiracy, all right, is that they killed off Hank's father, Cotton. He's killed off in the last season at a Japanese restaurant. The reason for doing this, obviously, because they're trying to sabotage the show. I'm not sure who is trying to sabotage the show, but whoever is against having King of the Hill on the air. The third reason that I believe that this is the biggest conspiracy that hasn't been talked about is that the King of the Hill appeared on Netflix about, I would say, approximately 6 months ago and was promptly removed from Netflix nary a month later. It was only on Netflix for 1 month, Sean.
yeah, Matt, that's an interesting conspiracy theory. I would say it was mostly canceled because Fox aired it at 7:30 on a Sunday, where it was often preempted by sports. Plus, the show had already been on the air for a decade, and Fox was already looking to expand its McFarlane empire with Cleveland show. But you can go ahead and have your conspiracy theories.
Well, that's what they want you to think, Sean.
That is what that's
What
what I'm
they
going to
want
think,
you to think.
and I'm going to agree with them.
The Cleveland show? Come on.
Listen, you're okay.
What a sad world we live in.
Oh, the Cleveland show was pretty terrible. I'm gonna agree with you. That was not. Yeah. That was not very strong. No. Well, Matt, thank you for walking us through that conspiracy theory. I guess we'll never know the true answer to what happened to King of the Hill.
Now you should tell us what you think your conspiracy theory is, Sean. You gotta have. You have to have one.
So my conspiracy theory is that Dunkin' Donuts murdered the "It's time to make the donuts" guy. Now, do you remember the time to make the donuts guy?
Actually, yes. Strangely enough, I was just talking about this with someone at work today.
I mean, because he used to be in all their commercials. He was the kind of the creepy, weird guy, and he was always, it's time to make the donuts, and he would make the donuts. And then all of a sudden, one day, he just vanished. My thought is he discovered Dunkin' Donuts' secret donut ingredient.
People.
No.
They're pets.
No. Sugar.
Oh, sugar.
He discovered Dunkin' Donuts was adding extra sugar to their products, making them unhealthy. And as you saw by his physical fitness, he was a fitness buff. Look at that guy. He had a six-pack ripped abs. Go watch those commercials. Anyway, he was going to tell the world, and Dunkin' Donuts had him offed.
Mm.
And that's why
he did pass away under strange circumstances several years ago.
I'm just saying, him and the "Where's the Beef" Wendy's lady. I mean, the two of them. What happened? Actually, now that you think about it, think about all those famous commercial spokespeople like Joe Isuzu and "Help I've Fallen and I Can't Get Up" lady and Billy Mays. They've all died.
That's true. Wow.
Don't ever be in a commercial, people.
I guess not.
It is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dangerous line of work. Very competitive.
I think OSHA needs to look into that.
Yeah, man, that's something suspicious is going on. Don't get a Flow from Progressive. Watch out, they're coming for you. I hope that was good enough for something I made up on the spot. That's it. No more conspiracy theories. We're done. We're done. We got to move on.
Right.
And get to today's topic. So, Matt, there was an epidemic going on in our great nation and around the world, quite frankly. People have run out of original ideas. There just aren't any anymore, frankly. It just doesn't exist. I think Goldilocks Zone was probably the last one. And so the problem is reboots and remakes. Right before we got in the air, I was watching the new trailer to Vacation, which is the long-awaited sequel to National Lampoon's Vacation. This one starring Ed Helms as Chevy Chase's son. we'll also see the Ghostbusters remake starts filming this year. We will also, I'm trying to think of, there are so many examples. Of course, Disney's doing live action versions. They've done a live action Cinderella, and they're doing live action versions of all their famous stories. Let's see, what else?
Can't wait for the live action version of Aladdin, and they're gonna have to go and find an actual genie. That's gonna be fun.
I think it would be fun. I hope they do like really cheesy makeup.
I mean, there was a time when you could just paint Robin Williams blue, but sadly, that time has passed.
Yes, it has. But we are in the time of the reboot, the remake, the sequel. So
I'm
we
talking
thought,
lions for the Lion King.
talking lions. We thought, let's focus and talk about some of these. Are they good? Are they bad? Our only criteria: a long span of time between the original and the one that followed. So no immediate sequels. No, Transformers, yes, they had several movies. Yes, they were all terrible. Doesn't count because they made them one after another. Ghostbusters is a better example, where there's 30 years between when it was made and when it wasn't. That's when you're really scraping the bottom of the idea barrel. Okay? They just came out with a new Odd Couple TV series, so you're really going back pretty far. So
That's right.
we're going to talk about movies. We've got a list of the ones we're going to talk about, and I think we should start with Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
Planet of the Apes.
It's a good starting point.
Many of you may know the original version, 1968's Planet of the Apes, directed by Franklin J. Schaffner and starring Charlton Heston, most notably, as a astronaut spaceman who crash lands on a desolate-looking planet and finds out that it is inhabited by a race of apes with human-like intelligence and speech, and are the dominant species over a weaker humankind. Spoiler alert, it was Earth the whole time. Matt,
Damn dirty apes.
You damn dirty apes. That's right. Matt, have you watched the original? Are you familiar with the original?
I have watched the original, and I've also watched the remake.
And you've watched the remake. Well, of course, the remake, 2001's Planet of the Apes, directed by Tim Burton, starring Mark Wahlberg, most notably, and Helena Bonham Carter, who is in everything Tim Burton makes. Essentially, a remake of the original. It's not, we talked about this before the show, the New Dawn of the Planet and Rise of the Planet of the Apes, those are prequels, right? Totally different from the original story. This version, 2001's version, a remake in every sense of the word, almost shot for shot, except for the slight change in the ending.
Yeah, but it was the same premise, just done in a different way.
Exactly. So, I'll start talking about them first, but for me, the original Planet of the Apes movie is a fantastic plot and a well-written movie with one of the world's worst actors, Charlton Heston, in it, who just shouts a lot for like 2 hours at people and is just really overacting, and he's terrible in it. But I think the plot of the movie is really great, which lends itself to a remake, right? For me, a good remake movie is a movie that didn't live up to its potential the first time or left a story hanging that wasn't told right.
Yeah.
I think Planet of the Apes is actually a pretty good candidate. The problem is when you have a movie with a sort of a twist ending like that, one of those thinker movies, it's really hard to remake because everyone knows what happens at the end, right? You're not really hiding that secret from anyone.
Unless you rewrite the ending and then just kill the entire spirit of the movie.
But then it's not a remake, right? Then it's sort of a reboot or however you want to phrase it. In terms of 2001's Planet of the Apes, I don't think it was as bad of a film as a lot of people make it out to be honest. I think some of the scripting ideas weren't really great. I think they leaned a little too much on sort of the action side and like any movie that came out in 2001. And I also didn't like the sort of the change of the ending where he actually does get off the planet. But other than that, I didn't think it was a particularly bad movie. I think both the original and the remake both had separate flaws that sort of doomed them to not be that great a movie. I just think and I think that's why the new prequels have been so successful is I don't know if it's a story you're going to get away with retelling, because it is such a unique story that you already know.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's been so long since I've even seen the remake of the Planet of the Apes movie. See, I remember it being pretty bad actually, and I might have to say, not really. It was basically the original movie, just shot in like with modern effects. It was actually it felt kind of lazy. Like nothing was really changed dramatically. It was basically like an updated version of the old movie, but not even in the sense of like a remake. Like remakes are that. It just didn't add anything. It was just like kind of taking the old movie and fast forwarding it up, bringing it kind of like up to modern effects. But he didn't really interject. And the director was Ridley Scott. Was it Ridley Scott?
For the Tim Burton.
Tim Burton. Sorry,
Yeah.
Tim Burton. He no, he didn't. Tim Burton has his own style, obviously, one of the most distinct styles in filmmaking. He didn't interject that at all. I felt in the movie. Like what could if you would like I mean I messed up the director thinking it was Ridley Scott. I mean, if it was a true Tim Burton esque film, I think it'd be impossible to do that. Possible to forget that you're watching a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah, and I think one thing you have to take into account too is sort of the weird story the remake had, where I mean they had been working on it for nearly a decade by the time the movie came out. At one point, Oliver Stone was attached, Sam Raimi, who you may know from Spider-Man, was attached, Arnold Schwarzenegger was attached to act in it at one point, and went through a number of writers, a number of plots, many of which were. I'll just quickly read this. This was the '93 version of the script. Quote. Set in the near future, a plague is making humans extinct. Geneticist Will Robinson, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, discovers the plague is a genetic time bomb embedded in the Stone Age. He time travels with a pregnant colleague to a time when Paleolithic humans were at war for the future of the planet with highly evolved apes. They discover a young human girl to be the next step in evolution. It is revealed the apes created the virus to destroy the human race. They must protect her from the virus, and in the end, they succeed. Now, does that sound anything like Planet of the Apes to you?
No, it's not the movies, but I believe that's where the direction the books went in. It sounds like they're trying to take the entire series of the books and squeeze it into one movie.
Yes.
Which actually would be a pretty cool idea. Well, I actually kind of like that idea.
It sounds much closer to the successful prequels than it does to the remake, right?
Yeah, it's not the movie that we got. But
exactly.
It's the movie that I think should have been.
And then you have a lot of... I could read the Wikipedia article is very interesting, but just the number of budget cuts and changes in directors. This movie was kind of set up to fail from the get go.
Yeah,
I think
so. It seems like this is one of those movies that kind of just got lost in the grinder.
But this happens with a lot of sort of remakes and associated franchises, which is where I don't remember what studio this is, Paramount or whoever owns Fox owns the rights to a movie. They'll just keep hammering until someone comes up with a halfway decent way to make it, because they're not buying a new script. They already own the rights, so they're not pouring a ton of money into it.
Yeah,
until it gets to actually shooting.
Well, yeah, So that's just like an idea I think that they had. They didn't go with it, and it just feels like nothing from the team around it. It didn't feel personal to me. It didn't feel like they really valued the story or the concept of anything going on in the movie. So that's why I just I was pretty disappointed when I saw it. Like I said, now I can't really remember much about it, but I remember coming out of that movie with much disappointment.
Yeah, pretty weak. Not that the original was an amazing movie, but it was a good movie with a cult following that I think would have been tough to follow up regardless of the script. But like a lot of movies, went through I think just too many revisions to be a true success. So
now that original story is one. I mean that original movie, and of course the book it's based on. that's such an original story, right? I feel like it's almost like a Twilight Zone episode made into a feature length film in terms of its originality. Um, so like you said, ideas are a lot harder to come by. You don't see anything like that anymore.
Yeah, but you know what though? I'm thinking about this. Imagine a world where the original Planet of the Apes never came out.
Hmm.
The book exists, but they never made a movie about it. And they made the same 68 version movie today with the same general plot and the same type of acting and, I don't think it would work today.
You
Regardless
don't.
of if there was an original remade or not, if it just had never existed and they made it brand new today, I just think it was a different time in 68 where movies were doing interesting things like this sort of twist story and where the fact that apes, the makeup at the time was pretty revolutionary in the movie, where today we sort of laugh at it. I just think our movies have become so fantastical that you would have had to. That's what Tim Burton, or well, really whoever wrote it, came up with the twist ending at the end of the remake, where it was like he gets off the planet and supposedly lands back on Earth, but it is Earth, but it's all apes now, but it's still Earth, and no one quite knows what it means. Like they tried to do. I don't think you could get away with doing this today. Maybe it's a movie that deserves prequels like they did instead of a direct remake. Because I just don't think this works today.
Yeah, yeah, right. I it's we've been wowed so much before by so many different things. I think that this would kind of just be like, oh, that's interesting. Like, what do you got next? But
I think that's right.
yeah. So where to next after our Planet of the Apes? Where are we headed?
So we're gonna move from a planet full of apes to a candy factory full of Oompa Loompas. We're gonna talk Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and its remake, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Hmm.
We'll start in the 70s. 1971, directed by Mel Stewart, starring the great Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka, an adaptation of Roald Dahl's book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, telling the story of Charlie Bucket, an orphan. Well, no, he's not an orphan, I'm sorry, a very poor child who gets a golden ticket and gets to visit a fantastical chocolate factory with other children. They learn a bunch of lessons, and in the end, everything is good. Released in 1971. Um, It was not a. I actually did not know this, but it was actually not a box office success. It only earned about $1 million more than its budget at the end of its original run. But today considered a great film. So great that Tim Burton once again just couldn't keep his hands to himself and decided to remake it as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in 2005, starring Johnny Depp as Willy Wonka. Essentially the same story. In a lot of ways. Tweaked in little places here and there. Certainly the tone and style were different. But the general beats of the plot were very similar. Matt, do you want to maybe start on this one? Give us some early thoughts on these two films.
Sure. This is actually a pretty stark contrast to the movie we just talked about, The Planet of the Apes. The Charlie slash Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movies are they're very different from one another, right? I mean, they're very the music was rewritten for the remake. The Some of the story was changed a little bit. So and this one actually really got the Tim Burton treatment, right? You could tell it was a Tim Burton movie. Not in the sense of like a dark and sinister Tim Burton, but like kind of like a whimsical, fantastical Tim Burton, like we saw with Alice in Wonderland several years later. Um, I liked the idea that the Oompa Loompas weren't little orange men anymore. They were pretty much how they were described in the book, um, more like little tiny like pygmy natives almost, which was an interesting direction because actually Roald Dahl got a lot of retroactive flack for his depiction of like savage natives or whatever in his factory. Um, and Tim Burton erred on the side of staying true to the story rather than rather than cater to the am I getting too racist here kind of thing. He didn't really care much about PC. But that was all right. I think that the movie didn't really have a huge success, if I'm not mistaken. The remake, um, but it was a fun movie. It followed the general premise of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I think that the biggest problem I had with it was the songs. I didn't really much care for the songs in the new one, in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. They were very weird. They replaced the geese that lay the golden eggs with squirrels for some reason.
Although,
Maybe that was in the book. I don't
well,
really
yeah, I
remember.
forget. One of them is accurate,
Yeah,
and one of them is not. I
I
want to
forget.
say the squirrels are more accurate.
Squirrels were in the book. Yeah, so I think that and even the title, the book is called Charlie and the Chocolate
It was
Factory.
squirrels in the book. You're right.
Okay. Yeah. So he's really Tim Burton was really going for realism, really going for staying true to the book,
Yeah,
which was great. I think that this movie is a much better example of a remake than Planet of the Apes for sure.
I think so. Well, a couple things. One, to me, I'm just really picky about terminology, and for me, the distinction between a remake and a reboot is that a remake is much more shot for shot and much more literal, where a reboot is taking an existing plot and giving it a twist. For me, this is a reboot, whereas Planet of the Apes is
Sure.
a remake. That's just my terminology. Not trying to be picky, but for me, this, while having the general beats of the same story,
But
is a
now,
radically different movie.
in I mean, I'm not sure if this is correct either, but my understanding of a reboot was that it was implied that it was the direction it was heading in was for sequels and for a series rather. So like a franchise character like Spider-Man, he gets rebooted because you're going to make more movies that feature him. You're going to make a lot of
Oh no, no, you're
more
right.
spin-offs.
Reboot means to discard all continuity in an established series in order to
Yeah,
recreate its character's timeline and backstory from the beginning.
yeah, yeah. That was that
So
was that was my
I guess
understanding
they
of
are
a
all
reboot.
remakes. Okay, all right. Well, terminology aside, you're right. Terminology aside,
Yeah.
let me put a big asterisk disclaimer right at the top of this. I do not like Johnny Depp, and I do not like Tim Burton fantastical movies. I do not like Nightmare Before
Uh-oh.
Christmas. I do not like Alice. I do not like any of those movies. I find them annoying, and I do not care for them. Now,
I do not like them, Sam. I
I do not like them very much.
do not like green eggs and ham.
That's exactly right. I do not like Tim Burton and Johnny Depp. But I'm going to try and remove that, open my eyes, try and have an open mind when it comes to these two films. I think I have a really tough time with this because for me, the original Willy Wonka is very analogous to the Planet of the Apes in that it has that 60s, 70s feel that I really like in films, so maybe I'm a little biased that way too. I think, when I scanned through the Wikipedia page while you were talking, I was not listening to what you were saying. Apparently, Roald Dahl's daughter felt the Tim Burton version was much more faithful and accurate to her father's vision when he wrote the book. I believe that. I believe the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the 70s version, is not intended to be a literal interpretation of the book. It is meant to be a movie loosely based on a book. I'm okay with that. I agree. I like the songs better in the 70s version than I do in the new version. For me, I think I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I think the tone makes more sense in the Johnny Depp version. It is a dark story. It is a weird story. I think one of the best scenes in the 70s Willy Wonka is when they're going through the tunnel in the ship and, he's going a little mad and he's shouting at them and like that sort of weird twisted side I felt like we didn't quite get enough of. Because we had the Candyman song and we had a lot of kind of fun stuff that I appreciated the new tone in the new movie. That being said,
I think that Tim Burton showed a lot of restraint in not going there and not going into that territory because he would have loved to. and I think he would have delved a little bit too much.
Yeah, I think these movies make sense for him as a director and his style. Alice in Wonderland, I think, is the same way. That fits him to a T. That is a weird, dark story that is really twisted, and he is perfect for that. I will say unequivocally that Gene Wilder is a better Willy Wonka than Johnny Depp.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
agree.
care about the tone of the movie. I just think Gene Wilder did a better job of being believable is not a good word because it is a fantastical character, but I think just a character you can understand better, a character with a range of emotions. You had the fun Willy Wonka guy, you had the serious, the crazy. You really saw the whole range in that movie. For me, Johnny Depp was just like weird.
Michael
Period.
Jackson.
Yeah, it was very on the surface, straightforward. You knew what it was the second you saw it. There was no
Yeah.
levels. There was no complicated. None of that. So I think Gene Wilder a much better Willy Wonka. In terms of the story overall, I think you got to give a lot of credit. I would consider this a successful remake, not just because of the box office, but because I think it wasn't just a remake for remake's sake. These are different movies.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
really are.
that's the main thing. I think the main thing that you can take away is that, unlike the Planet of the Apes example, it's not just the same movie sort of rehashed and just thrown back out X amount of years later. There's some original thought put into the film. There's some original ideas injected, and in this one, it even resurrects a lot of the old concepts from the book that weren't seen in the 1970s movie. So I think this is the perfect example. This is one of those benchmarks that other remakes should sort of aspire to.
I think the question you have to ask yourself is, can these two movies stand together in parallel, right? Is it worth having both of them? Planet of the Apes, no. I think you just need the original. You don't need the other one. You toss it. I don't need it. But on
Yeah.
this one, I see the value of having both, and that, to me, is a successful remake. Before we move on to our next movie, I just want to give you a little fun fact here. Matt, tell me, these are some of the other actors Warner Brother considered for the role of Willy Wonka other than Johnny Depp. Okay,
I
tell me
can't
if
wait.
any of these sound like a good idea to you.
Okay.
Starting most notably, the actor most likely behind Johnny Depp to have done the role of Willy Wonka in this film, Nicolas Cage. I swear to God.
That would have been excellent.
The second most likely, Jim Carrey, who actually I think could have been an interesting Willy Wonka. Also considered Michael Keaton,
No.
Brad Pitt, who I think would have never done it, but whatever.
Definitely not.
Will Smith, and Adam
Okay.
Sandler.
I could. Oh God.
Adam Sandler doing Willy Wonka.
Adam
would ju-
Sandler. Adam Sandler has my vote. I'm
That-
sorry.
that
I was about to give it to Will Smith, but Adam Sandler has my
Honestly.
vote. I would have loved to have seen Adam Sandler do Willy Wonka.
I will say,
It would have been hysterical. You know, he would have been talking in that
yeah,
yeah,
kinda like
that
stupid
Adam
fucking voice he
Sandler
does.
voice that he does.
you know, I will tell you, I am unequivocal in saying the Willy Wonka remake starring Adam Sandler would have been the worst movie ever made.
The
I don't think there's any
best
doubt about
worst
that.
movie ever made.
Oh no, I don't even think it would have been funny good. I think it would have just been
awesome.
awful. Oh my God, I can't even imagine. In the movie, he also plays one of the kids too. In the movie,
Hello, Charlie. Want a piece of pie? And then he takes out his guitar and sings a song about Hanukkah somehow in the middle.
oh man, oh he's so terrible, unbelievable. Anyway, thank goodness. If those are the alternatives, I'm kind of okay with Johnny.
As long as if it was Billy Madison era Adam Sandler and not
No,
like Click era Adam
The tone-
Sandler,
See,
or
now,
even worse, blended era Adam Sandler,
it doesn't say
it would have been
if,
hysterical.
It doesn't say if. My guess is Depp came on when Burton came on. Because if it were Adam Sandler in the Tim Burton version of this movie, that would have been interesting. That I would have liked, where it's all like dark and weird, and it's Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler.
That would have been an amazing movie.
Yeah.
An Adam Sandler type movie, nah, not so much. But we'll have to leave that at that. Excuse me.
So
We've got to continue on with our next movie series. We're going to move on from Fantastical Chocolate Factories to Nakatomi Plaza, because we're going to talk one of my personal favorite films, Die Hard. Die Hard. This is Bruce Willis starring as New York City cop John McClane. doing bad things to terrorists in multiple movies, starting with 1988's Die Hard. On Christmas Eve, his wife Holly, he visits her at Nakatomi Plaza in Los Angeles, and it's taken over by East German terrorists led by one of the best
Hans
terrorists
Gruber.
named Hans Gruber. Yes! Love it. Alan Rickman, who is amazing in that role.
He's amazing in every role.
He is. I'll give him credit. I'm a big Alan Rickman fan. And of course, he goes ahead and just shreds a bunch of terrorists. Followed up by Die Hard 2, the second film taking place in a Washington, D.C. Dulles airport. Mercenaries attempt to take over a plane to free a captured Latin American dictator en route to the airport. McClane, no one believes him. It's happening, so he has to go renegade and stop them. Followed up by 95's Die Hard with a Vengeance. Jeremy Irons threatens to blow up places in the city until McClane solves riddles and challenges. He's joined by Samuel L. Jackson in this film as well. Simon, the brother of Hans Gruber, in this film. Then comes the long sequel. So this is the part we're talking about. And that is Live Free or Die Hard, 2007's. 12 years after the third movie, we have the fourth movie starring Justin Long as a computer hacker who McClane has to work with to save the United States from a terrorist mastermind played by Timothy Olyphant, using cyber warfare on the United States. And, of course, that was followed up by 2013's A Good Day to Die Hard, starring McClane as he worked with his son in Moscow. Wow. That is a lot.
It's an extensive list. I've seen most of those. I think the only one I missed was the most recent one, the one with his son.
You know, I never saw Die Hard with a Vengeance, the third one. That was the only one I never got around to seeing.
That was my favorite one.
I gotta watch that.
The third with Samuel L. Jackson?
Yeah.
I love that one. Yeah, that was easily my favorite. Well, no, the first one's really great. The first one's it's good in a classic way, but my personal favorite was the third one.
I own, I think, 5 movies on Blu-ray. One of them is Die Hard.
Yeah.
It's
a classic, yeah. And you watch it every Christmas.
It's a Christmas movie, which is amazing.
It's a Christmas movie.
When you've had enough of Nightmare Before Christmas, you can put on Die Hard.
Yeah.
Let me get started talking with these. You know, I've said before, I am a massive fan of Die Hard, and even Die Hard 2 to some degree. Although, you know, I never felt the sequels really lived up to the original, although I haven't seen the third one, so I guess I can't say. But, you know, I think what was really great was it was 1988. We're smack in the middle of sort of a golden era of sorts in action movies. When you start talking things like a Terminator and sort of these films, today action films are very CGI heavy, they're very stunt heavy. Die Hard wasn't. It took place in one building for the entire movie. Think about that.
Yeah.
That would never play today.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And they didn't use crazy space weapons or any sci-fi anything. It was honestly just Bruce Willis doing ridiculous things with a crazy over-the-top villain and a plot that really didn't make any sense. But it was so entertaining. It was great.
It's really a movie that it keeps your suspense every time you watch it.
It really does.
You know what's going to happen, but you're still on the edge of your seat.
Suspense is a great way to put it. And I think what's really great about this movie is oh my god, I am like whistling coughing. What I think is really great about this movie is that it's not about anything. There's really barely a plot. I guess John McClane trying to get his wife back, okay, maybe a little bit, but it's really just a small glimpse into this world of like, what if action were real and it was kind of like this ridiculous world we live in. Another thing I like about the movie, too, is I thought it was very well shot, especially that, like, the famous last shot of Hans Gruber falling out of the building, and and he dies.
So iconic, yeah.
You know, the toes curling on the carpet to kill jet lag, and the guy killed in the elevator with the sweater, where it's like, I forget, what does it say on the sweater? Where it's like, ho, ho, ho.
I think it was, no, wasn't it, didn't say, like, hope or something like that? Hope for all seasons, or I forget.
Yeah, whatever it was. But it was so over the top. It was so good. The plot really didn't make any sense. But I think that was great. It was honest to goodness an action film to be an action film. And that's why I think it's held up so well over the years. Now, when it comes to Live Free or Die Hard, we'll skip ahead to 2007 because that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
12 years have gone by. Bruce Willis is a lot older. Live Free or Die Hard is not a good movie. I'm going to come out and say it. It's not a good movie. It's not.
Yeah. I
The
don't
plot
know.
doesn't make any sense.
No?
It's
You
full
didn't think
of
so?
it's full of all the things that weren't in Die Hard that I liked, which was it's full of over the top stunts, over the top acting. It is a movie that seems like it came out in 2007 when action movies stopped being true action movies, where it was all about the big explosions and the over the top villains. Possibly the worst thing about it for me anyway was all the hacker BS that they shoved into this film. Like,
Yeah.
very, very little of it makes sense. Almost none of it makes sense, let's be honest. With Justin Long as the computer hacker he works with, they shut down all of the power and utilities for the entire country. Like, okay, it was like Nakatomi Plaza made sense. Even with like the ridiculous bearer bonds and whatever, like
I think they were really catering to the .comers, right?
Well, it felt like they were
purposefully
trying to update it.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, definitely.
And
they were trying to make it more readily available to a new generation of action people who like being on the computer, basically.
And to me, that doesn't work for a real, honest to goodness action movie. It just doesn't. Come up with a new action movie idea. Or even take an existing one and tweak it. But don't do sequels of action movies after a long time has passed. I can't think of a good example where that has worked. Is Taken the most original idea ever? No. But if you had used a version of that movie from the 80s and tried to remake it today, I just don't think it translates as well. I have a tough time with that because you can only watch, by now they had already made 3 Die Hard movies. You can only watch Bruce Willis beat up henchmen. So even James Bond is played by different actors. I mean, there was nothing particularly unique or original about this movie. They just took a character and put him in a new ridiculous situation. There was no evolution. There was no.
I think this is where you're missing the point, though, Sean. I think that the whole point was that he's supposed to be like his character from the 80s, but like it's like where the world has kind of, it's a story where like the world has kind of changed around him and he's kind of like adapting to it. I'm trying to think of a good example of when this happens in another film, because it's a trope, if you will, of like.
No, listen. I'm getting too old for this shit. I get it. It's sort of when these characters have to adapt after. I get that, and I'm okay with that plot point. That's fine. But Die Hard is a straight action movie. It is about shooting bad guys and crawling through ducts and terrorists with guns. Don't overthink it. And for me, Live Free or Die Hard was overthinking it. Now we have to have super hackers shutting down the country. We have to have cars going off ramps into helicopters. Like, why are you messing with a working formula? Leave it alone.
See, to me, that was all like intentional. Like, it was all like they had all that set up so that you could focus on phone.
Man, it must be so tough being this popular.
Yeah. So it's almost like this the world has changed around him, but he's still the same, and it shows you how he still kicks ass even though he's old now.
He barely kicked ass in that movie.
I think he kicked a fair amount of ass. And his daughter was there too, and she was kicking ass. That was great. Yeah. So I think that's really what it is.
I've talked enough, Matt. What are your thoughts? You sound a little more positive on Live Free or Die Hard.
I really like them. I really liked Live Free or Die Hard. I really enjoyed it. Now, I didn't see the most recent film in the franchise.
No one did.
No one did. But this one, Live Free or Die Hard, I thought it was very good. I thought that it was like a, hey, remember me? I'm awesome kind of look at the franchise. And yeah, like the whole thing is like the technology is there, but he doesn't really get it. That's why Justin Long is there to help him out, because he's the young computer guy in the modern era. But he still kicks ass as like a classic guy, and he's doing what he does. Like he's keeping it real in a world that has moved on without him. And I think that's what the movie is about, really. when it comes down to it. It's keeping it real. That's the premise of the movie. And by keeping it real, he's able to beat the terrorists. He says his iconic yippee-ki-yay line at the end.
Oh,
And it was awesome.
that was weak.
I really liked it.
All right.
I left the theater very satisfied.
This is Matt. This is a pretty legitimate disagreement. I think we're gonna have on this one.
This is a heated one.
This is a heated one. Very controversial. I will point out some fun facts for you. Bruce Willis has stated absolutely he wants to do a sixth one. He claims it's in the works. So,
well, now you're getting into like Rocky V territory.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, to go back to your roots, I think it'd be good. The other thing I will point out is that Die Hard, Die Hard 2, Die Hard with a Vengeance, and Live Free or Die Hard are actually all based on separate existing works that are unrelated to one another. Die Hard and Die Hard 2 on two different novels by two different authors. Die Hard with a Vengeance based on a script unrelated to the Die Hard franchise, which was also intended to be the original script for Lethal Weapon 4. And they changed it to Die Hard. And Live Free or Die Hard was based on a Wired magazine article from 1997. So A Good Day to Die Hard was the first film in the series to come from an original screenplay.
Interesting.
So
those are some fun facts.
Those facts are fun. Absolutely. And the original Die Hard, 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. Live Free or Die Hard, 82%, the second highest rated in the franchise. So Rotten Tomatoes likes it. Well, we're out of time, Matt.
We're out of time.
Can you believe it?
I cannot believe it.
You're like, I
Still
literally cannot believe it.
Not buying it.
Well, Matt, it's true. I think we're just going to have to deal with it. But good news for everyone out there. We're going to be back with our next episode, which is going to be more reboots, remakes, long-awaited sequels, this time about television. So I mentioned earlier in the show, The Odd Couple just made a remake, was brought back. I'm thinking, and I'm not committing to this, but shows like Arrested Development we might talk about. Shows like Futurama, which was off the air for a number of years and they brought back, we might talk about that. I don't know. We got a lot of options. So we'll certainly have a lot to work with. I think television, in my opinion anyway, is a richer ground for reboots and remakes. I feel like that happens more often on television than anywhere else.
It seems like it does. Star Trek, another good one.
Star Trek, yeah, of course. The problem, most of the ones I'm thinking of were, like they did the Bionic Woman, they remade. Knight Rider, they did a remake. Problem is most of them don't stick around, so we'll have to find some that were successful, which may be more difficult. But
Star Trek.
Tune in next week and find out. Problem is I've never seen Star Trek, so I don't know.
Well, get watching.
Matt, I was thinking about it before you called, but I am this close to agreeing to watch Star Wars for this show.
Star Wars. For the show. See, no, this is bad because I need to see your reaction to Star Wars, so we're going to have to watch it together.
Okay, I think we can set something up.
You can't watch it solo. Yeah, I need to see it. That's what I say this to anyone who hasn't seen Star Wars. I need to see. I've never actually been with someone who has watched Star Wars for the first time.
Oh my goodness, it must
it's
be a
never
magical
happened.
Experience. We'll have to figure something out. We'll have to maybe do a weekend movie marathon or something.
Yeah.
I think
so. All right.
But next week we'll be back with TV stuff. Now we have a question, Matt, for the folks coming back next week. That question is, who would play you in the rebooted version of your life? What actor would play you in the rebooted version of your life? And what would the title of that reboot be?
Yeah.
So that reboot can be anything you want it to be. It can be the dark, twisted version of your life. It can be the fun, like Friends playing in the fountain version of your life. It can be the Die Hard Bruce Willis Nakatomi Plaza version of your life. However you want it to be. Who would play you and what would the
Planet of the Apes version of your life?
Planet of the Apes version of your life.
Where you live in a world that's controlled by a population of genetically superior apes.
Who knows? Anything's possible in your own imagination. So let us know at Goldilocks Show on Twitter. Tweet us your response, or you can email it to us, GoldilocksShow@gmail.com. Let us know. We'll talk about it on the air next week. Matt, anything else before we let the people go?
I think next week we are going to have to podcast free or die fast and furious.
6.
the prequel to the sequel of the trilogy of 5 books
of The Revenge Strikes Back podcast harder. The repodcasting. Okay.
That's next week.
That's next week. Well, you have to tune in then. On behalf of Matt, I wish everyone out there a fair good night. We'll see you on the next episode of
Until then,
Zone.
yippee-ki-yay, mother.